Chris, yeah, please send it to me. Maybe I'll recycle it next year. I still appreciate pictures. Uh, the Professor McKay, who teaches sections B and C, I think, she liked the idea of starting with pictures, and uh, she's done an awful lot of traveling around the world. And so she starts out, I guess, each class with a picture from her travels and asks, "Where are we?" And I guess there's one student that always says, "Oh, Dartmouth." I guess that's where he is, not necessarily where the picture is. So she did ended up including a picture of Dartmouth in her series of travels. That's where she lives, I think, is in Dartmouth. Anyway, but no, pictures are good. Uh, I was reading a book as well about creating short educational videos and things to do. And lo and behold, they suggested doing something very similar to doing this sort of thing to um, set a tone and try to make an online class different from being one that you're being taught just by a machine. And some of them do seem to come across like there actually isn't a person on the other end of the course. So we're up to starting time. So I'm going to get underway. Back in Halifax again. But this picture isn't now because you can see greenery out in the back. It's all brown with dead leaves and that sort of thing. It's from last fall. Dora taking over a place where the cats are supposed to be curled up. And my other two assistants, Sam and Bruce, in their standard lazy poses again from last fall. I don't have good ones of them recently. So, a few things before we get underway. This is going to be the last class uh, for this course. And on Monday, it's a holiday. And Wednesday, we're finished everything. We finish everything this week. And I don't see a case for trying to encourage you to come back next Wednesday for a wrap up. If we had a party and I had treats and things in the classroom, that might be different, but we don't. So we're going to wrap it up today. And what we don't get covered, you can read. That remember though, we've got the last assignment due Friday, and I'll talk about it once I get through these because I know that's one of the things that you're going to want to discuss is that assignment. The last quiz as well is on Saturday. So the last 10 points of the course are coming up this week. There is no discussion this week, and I'm going to be turning off the discussions that have been open. I'll do that at the end of the day today. And so we'll get set so I can start working out your final grades and the like. And with that in mind, please check your grades and see if anything is missing. Someone just emailed me last night asking about assignment 4 that the grade still isn't appearing. He had to email it to me, so I've got to go and check into that one. But please go and make sure that there are no blanks there and that I haven't forgotten to do something, and send me a note and I'll try to do that. Uh, it's hard to have gotten to know you this term as individuals, but uh, be aware that we hire students every year as being our teaching assistants, tutors in the Math Help Center, markers for courses, and that I would encourage you that the students that feel not just that you've done well, but actually you feel confident about the material, you feel you understand it reasonably well, um, that whether it be in this subject or economics or the intro to business, something like that, I believe you have to contact now the BCom advising office and you can apply to become a teaching assistant. And they've got a whole process there online to apply for it and encourage you to do so. It's good experience. You earn a little bit of money. You get to know a couple of profs. They're useful later when you need to get job references or if they ask for an academic reference. A prof that you've worked for is a good reference to have. That um, and for scholarships, that sort of thing, if you need references, that I'm always doing reference letters for students that have worked for me previously. It's Um, and a lot of students down the road, they find they need references and they don't know anyone. They've not really built strong ties, and it's hard with COVID to do that, harder than ever. So it's something to consider separate from the money, and the money isn't too bad. You can make, I think, about $1,000 being a marker each term, but you can get uh, the payoff in terms of references, and that is important later on. Scholarships, I've already told you, there are 250 that the university gives out. Not a huge number, but some of them are quite large. And there's generally just one application for. If you look online on the university's website for financial aid, they should have an online application to fill out. The survey for the course, it's still open. So if you haven't responded, I'd still welcome more feedback. I've heard from 109 so far, and it's been really interesting. I'll be putting together a report for the dean on your feedback because uh, a year ago, the feeling was, and this was expressed by numerous surveys of high school students, that students did not want online classes. They definitely wanted the in-person experience, and I think for good reason. My most memorable aspects of university had to do with the friends I made, the people I met. Very little with what I studied. It was all about people. And so there are huge benefits to that social interaction. That, uh, but, uh, and your survey in January started to suggest things may have changed. We had a good number saying that one of the things they liked most about the fall was courses being online and the flexibility and accessibility it gave them. That, but there was also a very large group that said that one of the worst things about the fall was being online and being lonely. And we did see that in the mental health type questions on the survey. Uh, Still worrisome in that regard. But in the feedback, one of the last questions I asked you is what to change to deliver this course in a face-to-face environment rather than online. And there was a very strong feeling that, well, it works fairly well online. I'm not sure if I had to take this sort of course again, I would take it face to face. Why not take it online? And many of you that indicated you had taken the course synchronously indicated you might well take courses asynchronously. That meaning you didn't attend live lectures, you'd record it, but depended completely on recordings. So there's a lot of very useful feedback about doing things whether face to face or online. That you gave me a lot of different ideas and a better understanding maybe of where you're coming from. But there's a diversity of opinions. So if this is not your opinion and you haven't filled out the survey, do so. Uh, that there isn't one best way to do this. One of the things that came out very strong is the uh, students learn differently. Material learns differently. Chris just points out, yeah, it depends upon the type of work. This is a technical sort of course. It might work online for this course or maybe accounting or finance, but something like marketing or management, which are more verbal courses, I'd say, than technical courses, uh, it may not work. And some of the ones in humanities, social sciences, I'm not sure. Uh, I don't. I don't have feedback on other types of courses, and I don't teach other sorts, at least not anymore. Um, and But your feedback really is important on that, so that we don't make some stupid decisions about how we deliver stuff. Um, yeah, if there's group work, and I've not used it, I know a close friend, is actually my son-in-law, taking a bunch of accounting courses, upgrading post-degree at another university, and it's all group work. It's very painful. They hate it group work when it's face to face, but even more so when it's online and other members of the group aren't responding. Challenging work. Um, that the uh, and group work is not the same as teamwork. Um, that don't let anybody ever tell you that it's you're learning how to work in teams, because teams have a coach, they have a team captain. There's a hierarchy within teams that keep you working together. That groups do not have that, and it makes it much more difficult. That there are a variety of issues in that regard, but give feedback on that type of thing. And uh, there are ways of making groups perform more like teams. Requires a lot of work by the instructor, but it can be done. Still, it's challenging work, and often working in teams, even in teams, is challenging. Some people tend to do all the work. Anyway, that I do definitely listen to your feedback and respond to it. It's how I've learned. I learned from you that. Um, uh, am I in that class 2D? This is 2D, isn't it? I think. Anyway. Um, oh, you're talking about the marketing course, maybe. Anyway, uh, I do appreciate your feedback and I do thank you for it. So let's get on right now with the assignment, because I've had some emails and maybe you want to post some things, but I think the biggest problem is starting it. So let me go and look at the assignment. Get this small enough we can see it. There we go. The challenging part in, I think, in the assignment is building the tree and trying to understand how trees work. So trees have to work sequentially. You have to start with one piece, and then from that, where can you go next? From that, where you can go next. So a few people have sent me things, and I think their problem is right at the start. And notice that the very first thing is about someone that missed their credit card payment, others made their payment on time. And we're just given this boom, by itself. So if I'm building a tree, this is where I would start. Okay, so let me do. I'm going to give myself lots of space, and I'll show you what I'd do. I'll try to do this, and drawing it by hand is a lot easier, but and if I was in, where am I? Um, Shapes. There we are. Okay. So I'm going to start putting in some lines here. So the very first thing I'm told, and I'm going to fix some of these things up here. If you're doing it this way, I find it painful going back and redrawing these things. So I always just copy the line, I paste another one, and then I just sort of go from there. So I would go and start out, and I've got two things, and I might put this one being M, 6%. Somewhere else, maybe up here, I might say M equals missed payment. So if you're going to use letters, and I won't do all the definitions, but if you're going to do this sort of thing, always make sure you've defined them. So it's the same thing I expect when you did Quant 1. Any course where you define variables, define them. Don't make it a mystery. I know it's intuitive that M might be missed payments, but sometimes it isn't. And let me just copy this as well. So again, once I've created one, I just go and edit them, make the other. So if this one was missed up here, then you have to go somewhere else. So that would be down here, and that would have to be 94%. Oop, make this bigger. Okay. Now, whoop, here we go. I'm going to go and build this thing differently. I'm going to go and I'm going to put a little box back in here. Don't mind. And mainly what I want in your tree is just the tree, okay? I don't need you to put calculations in it. I want you to just describe what are the events, like mispayment or not mispayment, and the percentages. And so the tree is going to be labeled as you go through. But as you go through, you're going to be doing calculations, and you can use formulas or whatever. I'm going to go and do it this way. Two types of boxes here. So 6% of 100,000 is 6,000. That's how many people miss their payments if I started with 100,000. And oops. And so down here, I'd have 94,000. Now, the next piece of information you're given about this is my starting tree, is whether or not the balance that they owed was more than $3,000. So again, I'm going to make this simple for me. Grab again a line here. I'm going to do the whole tree for you, but I'll do parts of it, okay? So we've got two options here. And let me just building this. It's just so tedious doing it this way, but you can't. I'd put most of it on the tree. Well, at least in terms of these little bits, because how else do I know what goes where? Okay, and we'll get to that one. But good questions as we go, and keep posting them in the chat. So I'm just going to give myself a little bit of space here, and I'm going to copy one of these boxes. So let me move one of my little boxes over here. So along this branch, maybe I should make that branch longer. So it's longer than my, yeah, it doesn't want to go straight. Anyway, and I'm going to make the text a little smaller. Okay, so what's this branch? This is a balance that's $3,000 and more. Okay? And so I should have defined that somewhere. Okay, that B 3,000 plus means balance greater than $3,000. I'm just trying to find some shorthand for doing it. You might even put B plus or something. And so if that's that branch, then this one must be that it was $3,000 and under, okay? Something like that, under 3,000. And I should make this a little bit longer so I can see. And I should put some percentages in here. So what percentage were over 3,000? I've got, I think if I read the question correctly, it said 60%. And in here too. And in there, there we go. Let me just find the question again so that I, whoops, no, the question's right here. Among, so among those who missed last month's payment, so I'm on the branch of people that missed their payment. Okay, this line is important. This says I'm on the M branch. The balance owing was over $3,000 60% of the time, but who made their payment, it was 15%. Okay, tricky, 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 tricky. Okay. So I'm going to have to go, hold on. Now, I know there's a better way of doing this, but I can't remember how to do it. Where you can copy a whole bunch of these at once. I know someone showed me once how to do it. Okay. So this is a similar sort of event. Okay, I'm putting down here, but this one is only 15%. So if you, again, go back to the text that says here, it's on the branch of missing a payment, balance owing over 6,000 or over 3,000 is 60%. That they made their payment, did not miss. It was only 15%. Okay, so up this one and up this one is 60. Down here and then up here is 15. And similarly, there's going to be ones down at the bottom that did it. Let me just show you, though, what happens next. So I've got 6,000 people here, and they're splitting. 60% of them are going down this path. 60% of 6,000 is 3,000. Whoops. Yeah, 3,600. So now my initial group has gone from 100 down to 6,000 down to 3,600. Um, well, isn't out of 1,000? You can go and do it out of 1,000 if you wanted. Um, yeah, this is in the wording. I'd probably do it differently. It says here they examined the records of over 1,000 customers over the last 2 years. So it isn't actually 1,000 people they're looking at. Okay, they're just looking at a bunch. That this is a group that they looked at, and this is where they calculated their probabilities from. I probably should have said that they looked at the records of many, many, many customers over the last 2 years. Um, but it's, yeah, you're not the only one that said that, that others have done the same. That, and so I could fill in the next branch, I could fill in all these ones down here. If I go further up here, um, that it has in the next paragraph, if you look at this group, it says among those with a balance over 3,000 and missed their last payment. Okay, so that's these group here. That's the same as that group. Okay, this is the group I'm focusing on. 80% paid less than 20% of the balance owing. So if they owed $4,000, they paid $800 or less than $800 on that account. Okay, so let me go and split again. Um, get crowded. Make sure you give yourself lots of room. And I'll get back to your question in just a sec. Let me just get this before I lose my concentration. So what do we got here? So what I've got is that the last payment was less than 20%. Okay, and that is 80% of these people, which, oops, did I do this properly? No, I didn't. Hold on. Grabbed the wrong thing. So this isn't 3,600. 80% of this, I worked it out somewhere. What do I get? 2,880. So it got smaller again. Show the math in the question. Okay. 20%, oops, um, is, don't worry about the 20%. That's how much of the amount they owe that they paid down. So when you make a credit card payment, you're not paying off the full amount that you owe. you're paying off part of it. Very often people either try to pay it off or they make the minimum payment. That because the amounts owing is all different. They Nope, not balance times 80%. I'm not interested in how much exactly they paid because it depends upon what they owed. I'm just interested in, did they pay a lot of what they owed or just a little tiny bit of what they owed? And I'm saying, did they pay less than 20% of what they owed? Maybe I probably should have phrased this, did they make the minimum payment on their credit card or did they make more than the minimum payment? Minimum payment usually just pays the interest and a little bit of the debt. Um, so it may be the percentages are confusing you. That 20% is not a probability. Okay, and exploding through my tree, I'm just using probabilities. So 6% is the chance you go through along this branch. 60% is the chance you travel this branch. 80% is the chance you travel this branch. And in the end, I end up with 2,880 people or payments, transactions, whatever cases fit that description. Does that make sense? And I do that with each of them. And if you do that, you'll get all of the things that you need. Okay. And you'll find in the end, I've started with 2, then I've got 4 branches at this level. Well, there should be another one down at the bottom. And then you're going to have them splitting 2 ways again. So you're going to have 8 of them all together. And these are the 8 cases you're going to get. So at the moment, I've got missed payment that I got 2,880 that fit that description. And you're going to find 720 are going to go the other way because I've got 3,600 here. So if I got 2,880 here, I'm going to need 720 down there to make it balance. This one, again, as I work through it, I'm going to get splits. I'm going to get a bunch of different numbers in here, and you should find your grand total like that. And this is sort of the way I did things in the lecture, and I've done it in the notes at times this way of just showing you frequencies. And most students like the frequencies, but I've asked you for a probability table. I do want you to change it just so that you can do it. Even though you may answer all the rest of the questions with frequencies, like a frequency table, I just want you to make sure that you can picture these as probabilities. This, I've got to make into a 1. So I've got 5 zeros, move the decimal 5 places over. So this is going to be moving it over 5 places. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to have to go 1 more. It's going to be 0, 2, 8, 8, 0. That this one here would be 0.00720. Keep all the digits. And so by keeping 5 digits, I can make sure I've got all the alignment right. And when you add them all up, check your work. It should be 6,000. Sorry. Frequency count. So the probability should be 0.006. On time, we had 94,000. So this is so yeah, I put in 720 here, but when I make it a probability, I'm going to make it 0.0072. Okay, so full numbers most people find easier to relate to. Decimals, uh, we have trouble imagining decimals, but we seem to be able to visualize full numbers. It's different. I'm not sure how the brain works and how that happens, but at least I've observed it in many cases that people make fewer mistakes with full numbers than they do with decimals. And so you can do the full numbers here, but for the assignment, it says the final probabilities. So you're going to have to make them into decimals. Okay. And so I did my tree. When I did it, I worked out frequencies at the end. And then I put them in my table, and then I converted them to decimals. And it seems like extra work, but I could see what I was doing at each step. And I caught myself making little errors. I get 0.072 by mistake. I just get uh, uh, keeping track of how many zeros I should have at the start or the end. Uh, I made mistakes that way. So that works out a lot better. Then with these ones, you can do these questions using the frequencies if you want to, if that makes it easier. This is a little more complicated than you had in the last assignment, reading from the table, because there are three types of events being described, whereas in assignment 4, I had only 2 types of events. Having 3 makes it more work. Like over 3,000, I've got that number, that's over 3,000, and that one is over 3,000. So I'm going to have to add them together. Okay, and a number of these ones you're going to have to add together. But most of these ones, I hope, you're going to be able to find that you can work out reasonably well. Okay. That are there problems with us up to question 7? I'll pause for a minute. For example, I'm waiting, Chris. It's okay. It's your class, not mine. Yeah, the trouble with, yeah, some students said that chat's a pain because you have to type, but you probably, your answer to question 3 is 17.7. Is that correct? It is. I think it's 7 is it 16.69 or 17.699 or whatever? Um, that that's your percentage. What is it as a fraction? That's the easiest way for me to work things out. So question 3, balance over 3,000. In my frequency count, I've got uh, um, in these, whoops, I've got what I've got. I've got over here 7110, and this being 10590. So adding those, yeah, I think so. That looks like it would add up to 17.7. Okay, because it would be this one plus that one divided by 100,000. Okay, that, and you'll express your answer as a percentage. I tend to show my work so that if you make a small mistake, we might be able to give you part marks on it by seeing where did you get it from. So if you left out one of the numbers for some reason. Okay. Let me jump ahead to this. Take what you've got in that table and the 100,000. And so I'm going to classify high risk to default um, as ones that owe more than 3,000. Previous payment was uh, less than 20%. Okay. I'm going to classify as, okay, how many would I be classifying that way? If I go back up here, missed payment, high risk to default. So how many fit that? Well, balance over that, big balance, small payment. There were 2,880 that missed a payment. and how many um, of those ones were on time. And in my calculations, I got 4,230 that were able to make the payment. This figure here, I think, Chris, you must have had the same number because you got the same probability here, 17.7. All these other ones that didn't have both of those things happening, okay, we're going to be treating. So here I've got that all of the rest of them I'm going to put as good standing, and I'm going to have some numbers in here. Okay, thank you very much about my math. I'm not using, and these I know. So this is truth. Okay, missed on time. These are our decisions. Okay, and you need to fill in the rest of this. So from this table, I want you to work out all the crazy rates that are in here, and then tell me about how it's working. All right? And hopefully it makes sense to you. If you still got questions, email me. I'll be available to answer emails and that type of thing. But hopefully that's enough giving you the tree and sort of how that table works. I'm hoping these probabilities you can reason out most of them. They're a little more difficult than in assignment 4, but they shouldn't kill you in that regard. And then if you've built this table, I'm hoping you can work out these various rates. The question that's come to me about these ones is what is positive, what's negative, true positive, true negative, that sort of thing. Try to follow the same format. Okay, so we're trying to predict mispayments. That's the truth. And this is that a positive result. We're saying, you're going to miss a payment. So that's our goal, is to find the mispayments. All right, if you can follow that piece. So now I'm going to go back and look at our slides, if we're okay. And if I have to go back to this again because I missed something, let me know. So we're into the last phase, and I'm going to go through it quickly, and I probably won't finish it all. But this is really important stuff. It's unfortunate it's the very end. But anyway, maybe next time I'll try to redesign the course to do it a little. Last term, we ended up with 23 classes instead of 24 as well, various reasons. So we've gone through a whole bunch. This is the last bit where we're trying to bring closure to a project. So your marketing course, you had to do group work, you had to do projects. That the How do you bring closure to that project? And often we fumble at the finish line. We're seeing a lot of that with politicians. If you're in Nova Scotia, the provincial government fumbling their Biodiversity Act, coming to the end, presenting how they're going to change the environment. And then, because people complained on both sides, they went and suddenly changed it all. So it's nothing like they planned. And everybody's mad at them now. Um, that AstraZeneca has botched their job of presenting their vaccine and vaccine results. Not a bad vaccine, I don't think, but they've sure done a terrible communication job. Communication is so critical, or nobody believes you or trusts you. So you've got to look at whether or not what your solution is, does it really solve the initial business problem? And in a number of instances of projects that started before COVID, the business problem has changed. Um, as I said, teaching is completely changed. Anything we planned before is now wrong. Um, the university is moving ahead with planning a new building. Only a little bit of it is for classrooms. But the classrooms they thought of building are from before you started doing things online. We're going to need different technology in the classroom if you want a recording of the class. And that's something all of you said, that this is you found very beneficial, to be able to go back, even if you attended the class, to see a recording of it. Have they been able to record a discussion in a class? So you're talking about a marketing course, a lot of discussion, should be a lot of discussion in the class of that, doing case studies and the like. How do you capture that in a recording? Uh, Different type of configuration you're going to need for it. What if your group discussions in a classroom you've got a social distance for? Maybe that never goes away. I don't know. But it may be our solution. That the problem moved, the target moved while you're doing your work. How they're going to be used, who's going to use them. The users have to actually buy into it. We've got a problem with healthcare workers in long-term care facilities. They're refusing the vaccine. So the patients are all vaccinated, but the staff are not. So it's now still a high-risk environment and visitors aren't allowed. Wasn't that stupid? So they didn't get the buy-in of the healthcare workers. And will they believe you? That is so important with any type of process you're using, getting that believability. Uh, the metrics you're using to evaluate it, do they really resonate with management, with the users? Are they compelling? The metrics we're using around COVID are really confusing. They've confused a lot of people. They needed a simpler messaging system. Unfortunately, the messaging is coming in a lot through the media, a lot through Facebook, where you have no control of who the messengers are. And so this has become a real problem. But within your organization, you've got to control that type of thing and make sure you're doing it properly. That the understanding risks and sometimes understanding the model. There's a debate at the moment about a tool called artificial neural networks. It's a lot of the stuff behind artificial intelligence. And it's a technique I've not talked about in the course. I still don't understand it. I've tried for years understanding it before it became popular in AI. Um, but it's supposed to simulate the way the brain works. But it's a model. Even the people that build those models don't understand how the model works. They understand the theory behind it, but the actual model they've created, they don't know what's inside it. It's a black box. That, again, creates a problem of buy in. So, risks, that sort of thing we've been talking about. Your deliverables, you're going to have a summary report. Okay. Lots of times people don't read it. Okay. Managers tend not to read it. Um, they read the recommendations, an executive summary. And it's an executive summary. It's supposed to be for executives. They should read more than that, but a lot don't. And a lot of them don't even read the executive summary well. So um, that recommendations, and so on, that you've got is in that sort of executive summary. Um, you've got to spend a lot of time crafting that and making it really, really clear and compelling. There, that's buy-in to the people at the top and other groups. But then there are the ones in the front lines that have to actually implement your stuff. So you need an implementation plan. And that's got to be done in detail. And many projects, again, fail when they try to implement it. Part of it is because of distrust among users and getting the buy-in and the like. A lot of the users don't want change. But often it's because you haven't thought through the implementation properly. And we've seen that we're struggling with our vaccine rollout. The implementation plans, we're making them up as we go, part of it being under pressure. There's not a lot of time, and we're doing it for the first time, so we don't have a lot of experience. So there will be problems. But even when you anticipate problems, part of the implementation plan has what's the plan B? What do you do when things go wrong? And often you're evaluated best on uh, what's your recovery strategy? What do you do when mistakes happen? And if you've got a good recovery plan for mistakes, then generally your implementation goes much, much smoother. There are a lot of organizations that don't have a recovery plans or even assignment of responsibility for recovery. When things go wrong, whose responsibility is it and how do they do it? How do they fix it? Uh, most of these data mining projects, since the data has been collected over a long time, it's something that's been happening for a long time, like checking for credit card fraud or trying to predict bankruptcy or that type of issue. And that's not going to change. You're going to keep doing that in the future. But people may change. The company may change. Its procedures may change. So your old data no longer works. You've got to use new data. You have a maintenance plan. How do you update the model as you get new data? Um, so you need that maintenance strategy. And I can think of one project that was implemented at St. Mary's to advise students. Huge amount of work and money went into building it. The initial rollout was rather bumpy, but of course, programs change, opportunities change, advising changes. There was no maintenance plan, and the project died because everything became out of date, and there was nobody with responsibility for doing the update. And they didn't think about how complicated the update was. The update ended up being a huge amount of work. Um, so you need a maintenance plan as well, because most data mining projects are not one. And it's not like a construction project, build it and you're done. It's build it and then maintain it is going to be a thing. And then for you, there's a lessons learned report. You're going to have to do future projects. What have you learned from this one that mistakes you don't want to make next time? How do you make your group work better than it did last time? Anything that you can do better for the next group project you deal with? Maybe do a lessons learned report on your marketing course. Um, so again, I've talked a little bit about things like implementation plans, the things that'll go into it. Lessons learned report, we've talked a little bit about. I've only got half an hour. I'd like to get through this. Make sure your summary report, it's written as a story to a reader. Don't use technical jargon. Don't necessarily talk about CRISP and the CRISP process. Uh, the first term I taught this course, I had students do a major project in the course. Some of them were amazingly good. I must say I was really impressed with the quality of the work the students did. But their summary report talked too much about the process. And very often, the manager that they would be writing the report for doesn't care. You care about the process and how all the work you had to put into doing it. They just want to know what you found. So be careful about how you're writing it, making sure you're writing to the audience and only addressing what's important to them. The other things that are important to you, it's worth writing that. That's part of your lessons learned exercise. Think of it as being two reports, one for yourself, one for the client. But I really want to emphasize storytelling and that um, you're going to have to do a business communications course. The sense I have is they really don't get into storytelling. That you've got a lot of courses, particularly in marketing and management, where you're going to be doing case studies and writing reports. Can you write a compelling report? Um, and they may have a template that you follow for writing up a case study, which has a beginning, middle, end to it, so on. But it's got to flow really well. Don't carve it up in writing a project where, okay, John's going to write the intro section, Marianne is going to write the middle bit, and uh, you know someone else is going to be writing the conclusions at the end. No, because unless you're really communicating really well among the three of you, there's going to be a disconnect. The analysis doesn't seem to match up with what the project was supposed to be about. And the recommendations, some of them are coming from nowhere. It doesn't fit with the analysis. Everything should flow through in that story. So it's like reading a mystery or something like that, where you're reading through and all the parts interconnect. So there may be surprises in there, shouldn't be in a report, but you can see how they flow through. Okay, that don't write it like a mystery with the big surprise at the end. It should flow through. It should be really predictable. It should be like a good children's story, and that it's got to be believable. the whole thing, beginning to end. It's got to have a logical flow. Okay. And what you're going to emphasize is the exciting things because they don't, the boring things are important, but you lose the reader. So you, the boring parts, if you have to put them in there, you've got additional challenges on how to engage people with the boring parts. It's hard to do, okay? But that's what makes a really good story. That the conclusions should not come as a surprise. Um, yeah, uh, Chris, it's strange that I'm teaching you this in a quants course. Um, that I used to teach operations management, business processes course, uh, where it was a third and fourth year course, a lot of case studies in it, and the reports were appallingly bad. And it didn't matter. I taught it with the MBAs, and they were at least as bad as the undergrads, probably worse, because they used a lot of jargon that they got taught in other courses. And uh, it was in the flow part and how their group worked. Again, it was a group project, not a team project. Um, Team players pass the puck. Okay, you've got to share the puck to score a goal. You work together. Groups don't do that especially well, but you need that flow through, and uh, you're coming up with recommendations. And it may be some of the things are that uh, you can't make a firm recommendation. You may have identified areas that you say they should be cautious about and should be investigated further. A lot of data mining ones are that the end of one project is to tell them how that they should have collected the data better or what data they need in future to start collecting so that they can answer this better. After they've understood it, the problem better, they could go back and actually rephrase the problem statement, the business problem, and redo the data bit. And then they could go through in the modeling and all the way through again. And so sometimes with data mining projects, it would be nice if we could do it twice. um, and uh, you've got to be careful with some projects. You may, if you are a consultant doing it for the client, it may be that you can't tell them what to do. They have to figure it out themselves because it requires unique business knowledge. And you, as an outsider, shouldn't be telling them. You end up talking at them. It's the way we've dealt with uh, a lot of issues to do with equity and diversity. We tell Indigenous people what we're going to do for them. Stupid. No, you've got to engage them and get them to tell you what they need. You can never see it through their eyes. You can't see the problem through the business's eyes because you're not the business. You do not have the depth of knowledge of the business that they do. Even if you've done consulting with lots of other businesses, you may tell them this is how others have tried doing this, but that business is unique and those things may not be applicable to them. So be careful on phrasing the things. That it may be that you're telling them things that they need to study and understand better. Even in the way you write it, we tend to be very text heavy. And when I first wrote the notes for this course a year ago, there was twice as much text as you've had. When I started work with Top Hat, they told me this is all online. Students don't read. Nobody reads. Not just students, everybody. We scan. And so the formatting of the pages of the text was redone. Still work in progress, um, but it's still text heavy in a lot of spots. Uh, but try to make more use of different fonts or size of fonts and boldface. That because we scan things, we don't read. We scan down until we see something interesting that probably jumps out because it's a heading, it's in boldface, it's underlined, it's in color, it's set apart in a box. Um, It's down on the margin as a quote or something like that, or you intersperse quotes, things like that. Those things attract the eye. And you have to understand that when you're reading things, it's how does your eye work? What does your eye get attracted to? What engages you? And there's a lot of work you have to do on that. I'm not an expert by any means, but I'm reflecting upon how I read. And from the feedback I've had from other students, like, did you read your economics textbook? And, oh, did you read it? Or did you just sort of look at the section headings and some of the charts, that sort of thing, and you skip large blocks of just heavy text? You went back and had to read them if you felt you had to. The first time through, you skipped over a whole bunch of them. That's how we read. So write your report that way, because that's the way the manager's going to read it. You give a manager a 10-page report, they're not going to read 10 pages. You're lucky if they read 2. And these are good people, okay? They're busy though, and they think they're using their time efficiently. Not always, but that's what they do. Tables and graphs are really good at catching the eye, so use them a lot. Instead of putting stuff in text, put it in a chart or a table to say your message, or maybe do that and put the text. They won't read the text, they'll read the chart. So you get one crack at them with that chart. So what do you do? So it's tricky work. You've got to really think carefully about the design. And that's sort of in the course why I've tried to tell you about labeling things and the like. And I'll show you examples now. And I got 20 minutes to zip through a bunch of these, okay? Um, John Tukey, he's the guy that did the box and whisker charts, among other things. It talks about the value of pictures, forces you to notice what you never expected to see. And so, in Excel, they've got a whole bunch of charts, and they're more than what we used. And a lot of books go and tell you how to do each of these, but they don't tell you why or when to use them, when not to use them. And most of them have different versions you can use. So watch it. I'll show you a bunch here. Line charts. Line charts are for time series data. So if I've got data over time, it may help me tell a story. And a lot of these ones are good. So these are the educational ones are with real data. This is from the Maritime Provinces Higher Education Commission. And this is business students studying at Nova Scotia universities. And where did they come from? And unfortunately, the default colors that Excel used were not good. These 2 blues look almost the same. This is from Nova Scotia. And as you can see, it's going down. This is because of birth rates many years ago. And we've seen a steady decline in the number of students graduating from high school. Graduation rates have gone up, but the number of graduates has gone down because the number of students has gone down. That the Here we're getting a big intake from Ontario. This is primarily the work of Dalhousie. We get a little bit from BC and from New Brunswick, PEI, but not huge numbers. And New Brunswick has been on the decline because the same demographics as Nova Scotia. It's not because we're capturing fewer students and they're staying home. It's just that their population is in decline. The international is interesting in that it went up. We had a good sized peak, and then it actually went to decline. Um, this is up to 1819. If you went an additional year, 1920, still not the COVID year. It's going to have a big fall off. This is in part a decline. China, to some extent, and a lot is to do with Saudi Arabia, where the government stopped sending students to Canada. That it tells you about the individual parts, but what does total enrollment look like? Well, a stacked line chart helps see the total because it's up here. But the individual parts are harder to see. This one isn't too bad with the way they've been stacked. So the Nova Scotia I can see clearly at the bottom. And the international, I can see it's getting wider but I can see to some extent it's contracting. But I'm not sure if I can see the full extent of the decline in international because the base of this one is moving. So it's tricky. What are you trying to emphasize? The total? Or are there certain components? If there's one component that you want to emphasize how it's changed and the total, put that one that's most important at the bottom. So it's just the same as a line graph, really. And then it's like a total line. And then you're showing the others. You got to think through. Also, make sure you're telling the story. Business enrollments decline after a decade of steady growth. We grew for a decade and then we're into decline. Now, this is made up numbers for you. So here's a company that has 4 products, A, B, and C, and these are in different markets. One of the markets being the Netherlands. Often it's shown with a pie chart. So what percentage are in each piece? I find it difficult because B and D look about the same size. C is relatively small. Does it look like it's about a third of this guy or a third of that one? This one looks like it's a lot bigger than that guy. Does this one look to be twice as big as that one? I don't know. I have trouble doing comparisons. It's a little tricky. That and it's because we're looking in a circle. Often they present it in 3D, and Excel allows you to do that with a lot of the charts, adds 3 dimensions. But why do I need 3 dimensions? And when I look at this, it distorts everything. It'll because I'm tipping it backwards, it'll distort left to right and compress up down. And so depending upon where you are in the pie, it'll make your slice look bigger or smaller. Sort of like maps of the world, where they're trying to take uh, a ball and put it on a flat surface. It stretches out. Northern Canada becomes really, really wide. Okay, so it stretches the top, shrinks the bottom. So you've got to be careful on these things. Never use 3D charts. Please don't. It with other charts, it creates other problems with. I'm not going to get into here, but they always distort things and make it harder to interpret. What are you trying to tell them? What's the objective of this? If I was comparing pie charts, and I've seen examples of this, of them having pie charts, here are my 4 markets and the 4 different products I'm selling, how am I supposed to be able to compare these? Let me make this wider so you can see my words. Um, what are you trying to show? I really don't know. Um, it's pretty picture. And if you need a picture, and I'll show you one in a minute, uh, just for visual relief, then okay. But be careful about why you're using a pie chart. There are very, very few cases where I'd ever use a pie chart. Um, that I use this expression I learned from an architect when building the Sobe building. Form follows function. Figure out what you're trying to do first, then you design something to meet that. Don't design a nice building without thinking about how you're going to use it. And you see a lot of buildings that are gorgeous, but they don't function well. So column charts I prefer when I'm doing comparisons across groups. And that's what I've had you use when we did pivot tables. That so here I've got my 4 products, my 4 markets, very busy as a clustered column chart. Tricky to look at. I've got these organized in terms of Norway was my biggest market, Belgium next, then Austria, then the Netherlands. So they're left to right that way. But I also may want to sort them in terms of the products, A, B, C, D. There's nothing magical about sequence. I've organized them in terms of total sales of products. So my biggest product is this yellow one. My smallest product is the blue one. And so this makes it a little bit easier looking left to right as well. Challenging though to be able to interpret. There's I'm describing three variables at once here: the market, the product, and total sales. Three things in a chart is a maximum you can possibly fit in there, really, and it's challenging. That you can do it as a stacked chart. We did a stacked line chart before. I could do a stacked column chart. And so this is in terms of product sales, and it does help emphasize that the Netherlands is a much smaller market than Norway. So it conveys that. Again, I should probably put my most important product on the bottom, not on the top. My most important one was the orange one, I think. I should have put it on the bottom so I could see how it's changing across markets potentially. Um, I've put the slowest seller. So it's, again, you can think about, what do you want to put on the top and what do you want to put on the bottom? On the stacked line chart, Nova Scotia was on the bottom, International on the top, and all the rest in the middle. That you can do it as a percentage. This gets to be more like a pie chart. Okay, so this is like a pie chart. Instead of 4 pies like I had before, where's that one? Instead of that one, okay, with 4 pies, this is the same information in columns. Still hard, okay? It does make it a little bit easier to compare slices across groups, but it's tricky to do because the base of each of these chunks is moving. Um, the Why Nova Scotia on top or not? Get back to this one. Nova Scotia is on the bottom in this chart, and it's just like a line chart. So it tells me Nova Scotia has been in decline for the last 15 years. Okay, so that's an important message to tell me. The top tells me that the total, though, across all markets was increasing and then decreased. So these are two different stories. International sitting on top um, ended up working reasonably well because when I add up all of the first four groups, it's reasonably flat. So I can see how international is growing. Um, but putting the one on the bottom makes it like a line chart. And then you've got the total. So I've got one group as a line chart, total as a line chart in a sense, and then everybody else. It's tricky, okay? And there aren't rules you should follow, okay? Firm rules. Each one's going to be different depending upon what you want to describe. Is one of these stacked ones better than an unstacked one? This is percentages again, but um, as a clustered column, still it's hard. Three things at once, very difficult. A few other things though. Why would you use a bar chart instead of a column chart? Here's ones where the labels, the descriptors, these are different products of a company. Um, it's hard to read, even in the diagonal, where it's easier if I put it horizontally and make it. Again, I tend to do sorting of my columns. I like to have the most important one at the beginning or at the end. With a bar chart, I like it at the top because we look top to bottom. As a column chart, left to right, we tend to get drawn. Why often advertisements are on the right-hand side of a screen? Our eye gets drawn to the right. In a book, notice how the notes and that sort of thing often are in the right-hand margin. Okay, our eye gets drawn to things on the right. So if the biggest group is the most important that you want them to see, put it on the right or put it on the top. Little things. Um, we already did these ones here about scale and doing histograms. Okay, and I'm not going to go over that again. That histograms can be useful. Box and whisker can be useful. Scatter charts. This is one that a student, 2 years ago, when I first did the course, and students did, they wanted to show student GPA and high school average for a group of students. And the data was dirty. We had students that had a high school average of 0. No, that's stupid. Or they had a grade point average of 15. That's stupid. Um, so, but they didn't think of taking those out. That they used one of the questions from the survey, what's your approximate average out of 100 in high school, as a title. That doesn't belong there. There were no labels on the axes. And actually, this was GPA, and that was high school average. The axes are backwards. So I flipped it around, cleaned it up. High school average, grade point average, high school, I gave it a title. High school is not a strong predictor of university success. A lot of scatter here. And that was the message trying to convey. Took out the outliers, um, scaled it. So I only went from a high school average of 60 to 100. I don't need to go down to 0. No one's got that. So do a lot of cleanup. And in some of the charts, you need that. So here's my quick run through of putting it together. This is from the beginning of the term. Every day, the Nova Scotia Department of Finance puts out um, its daily stats, and it's information coming from Statistics Canada. And it usually has to do with a whole bunch of reports come out every day from StatsCan. So this was back in January, where these were estimates for July, and they were revised at the end of December, looking back to a year ago and looking at population change in Nova Scotia. So they wanted to talk about how does the population, the demographics in Nova Scotia, how have they changed over the last 1 year or several years? So over the last year, it looked at by county who was up, who was down on a percentage basis. Here's Halifax, big jump. Antigonish had a relatively big jump, and Nova Scotia overall was big because of particularly Halifax. But some were down, some were up. How many was that in terms of people? Well, Halifax has got so many people. So it's got a huge spike, and then everybody else. So what it did, they did one with the big spike for Halifax. Then they did another chart for the change in number of people, but without Halifax in it. So you could, they blew up the bottom part. It's like hiding an outlier. Um, uh, should you think they should have been um, there was text description above and below. I've just snipped things out of a long report. Okay, I'm just showing you their charts. But nobody bothered reading the text, I don't think. Some did. Here are some of the things they wanted to talk about. Well, why did population change? Okay, it changes because of births and deaths. Halifax had births. Everybody else had more deaths. Important story. That, and we'll see why this comes up shortly. Some of it is the change has to do with immigration. So people from outside of Canada coming in. And once again, Halifax drew all the immigrants, and then others got scattered around. So they blew up the rest of it. Halifax is always the outlier. So here's the outlier in, outlier out. What about moving from other provinces, from New Brunswick or Ontario or what have you? And we had a big chunk of in-migration, most of it, again, in Halifax, that have coming from out of province. A lot of it is people returning from Alberta still. Um, that, but Halifax, big beneficiary, but everybody else got some. Nobody lost any. Okay, we gained more from out of province than we lost. That's something unusual. Historically, we had a lot more flows out of province than in. And then within the province, people move. And it's generally they're moving from rural areas to urban areas. So cities, and this is happening across the country, and it's been happening for 50 years. People move from the farms. Years ago, it was moving from the farms into the city. Same type of thing. Um, it's an issue in many countries. China has got, you know, huge population shifts from the countryside moving into the cities because there are more opportunities seen in the cities. So we see all of these ups and downs. So that previous total change is actually made up of 4 different stories that are happening here. And then over time, what's been happening, and this is the rural to urban shift from and you can see most, and now they showed this as a whole bunch of little line graphs. And you can do this of having a whole bunch of these shown at once. And there are graphing tools for doing that, to do a whole bunch of plots concurrently. And like when you've seen a correlation table, you can get, in a sense, like a scatter chart where every correlation has its own little scatter chart into a nice picture. And you can see Halifax has been gaining. Hants and Kings County are both counties that are right near Halifax. Okay. And also, where is it? Should be one other, if I remember correctly, isn't it? Yes, Colchester County is not far away, and it gains as well. Um, that Antigonish has been doing okay of late, but all the rest are in decline, and some of them very sharp decline. Cape Breton got a little uptick at the end, but many of them are dying. Okay. That it's a serious problem. I know I'm over time. They did put in one pie chart. It's unusual for the Department of Finance to use pie charts. Um, it's a nice, colorful picture. They had a lot of line charts and bar charts, so maybe a bit of variety. Again, it's to hammer home the point of how big Halifax is compared to everything else, because they've been looking at all these little changes. And this is a little bit helpful in putting it in context. Also, it wasn't clear before how big Cape Breton still is, though it's in rapid decline. It's in serious trouble. Um, that they had this for every county, and I don't know if you've ever seen this. These are amazing charts. They're what they call population pyramids, a very unique type of chart, generally only used for population. So usually it has males and females, and by ages. So this is Halifax. So we've got um, our young population here, under 20, fairly stable. We've got a growing bulge here that are, say, between 20 and 40. And then here's the baby boomers that are dying off. But this bulge here, okay, is fairly large. And this is the bunch that's going to keep moving up. Okay, this doesn't stay fixed with age, it moves. This group here that's flat in the next 20 years is going to move up here. So we're going to have fewer people 20 to 40 years old unless there's immigration, because those under 20 is it's a small cohort that's going to move forward in the future. That declining university enrollment in part was because 10 years ago, those people that started university 10 years ago were 30 or 28 to 30 now. So they were a large group compared to what you are today as a new group, those of you just coming out of high school. So you can see these things move up over time. Okay? The I don't know if you can see the faint line, but this is Nova Scotia overall. Nova Scotia overall has fewer young people in that 20 to 40 age group. And the province as a whole has a lot more that are in the 60 to 90 age group. The same, it's for male and female, same sort of thing, a little bit different. Here's Guysborough County. It's a fairly small county, very, very rural. And it's got similar sort of birth patterns as we've got to the rest of the province. But look at the 20 to 40-year-old group. Here's the province as a whole. Here's Guysborough County. There aren't any. They've all moved away. They got a serious problem. They don't have a labor force that are in that prime labor force age group. This is where the province is. This is where Guysborough County is. At least this is females, this is males. But look among the elderly. These are people 65. That's the point out here, or over here. It's got a lot of old folks. Huge, huge number compared to the province. You know, the province as a whole has a lot. We are a very old province, but it's got a crazy number. everybody's a retiree in Guysborough. And eventually they'll die. So all of these people, when we looked at the population going down, the population in Guysborough County is going to just flatten in the next 20 years because there's nobody to take the place unless you can find ways of getting people to move there. Huge story in these graphs. Um, that this looks at median age, it tells the same story because this is median age over the last 15 years or thereabouts. And you find Halifax is relatively young. Guysborough County is very old. Average age is around 58. In Halifax, it's around 40. So there's quite a difference. And the counties close to Halifax are relatively young as well. So if you're a business and thinking of where to open up, um, unless you're a funeral home, I wouldn't open a business in Guysborough County. It just, the markets aren't there. This I'm not going to get into. It tells the story across Canada. The reds are population changes in the last year outside of major cities in each province. And generally, the bars are negative or they're small. And in the cities, that's where the growth is happening. So we're seeing growth in most cities, most urban areas, not in little ones. A few other stories. This is one from a year ago. StatsCan put out a report about the age or the number of university professors and deans and that type of thing. And so full-time faculty. This is the number of females back in 1970, 71. Sort of like when I started university. There were very, very few. As an undergraduate, I had 2 female instructors in my 4 years. And as a grad student, over 4 years, I again had 2. All others are male. Um, and so you had about 15% female, 85% male. If you follow this graph, you realize that this is a mirror image of it. So if I take 50, draw it across here, I can fold this and I get the same thing. What a waste of ink. Why are they giving me both? They didn't tell, they should have put a heading instead of full-time academic staff as proportion of sex, the very dull title. The gap between males and females is decreasing. It's starting to slow a little bit, but we're seeing real convergence here. That's an important story to tell. That should have been the title of this chart. And then by having both lines, it tells you about the gap because that was what the article was about the gap between males and females. So in that instance, the chart should mirror what the title is, and the title what the chart's telling you. I'm not going to bother with these. These are a bunch of other ones I've used. It just make sure when you're doing it that you think about what is the story you're trying to tell and then build the chart to reflect that. Make it a good picture book. Look at if you've got a younger sibling or a niece or a nephew that's, say, 6 years old, likes bedtime stories read to her or him, look at the pictures in the story. Or if you got still some kicking around at home, look at them and see how the pictures complement the words. The best stories, the two fit together really well. My dear, there goes a tiny dog down the street and nobody with it. So anyway, that's my recap. Ba, 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 ba. We're out of time. I've gone over, way over. But make sure your story is simple, clear, honest. Be honest, be transparent, but get your message across. Okay. Um, have a good summer. And visit me sometime when it's safe to do so. You guys take care. And good luck on last quiz and getting through the assignment. If you got questions, you know how to reach me. And you can reach me anytime this year, even next year. If you got issues with stats going forward, I can answer questions on that. But I'm terrible with any other subject. It's not my area of expertise. I'm a math person, almost only. But take care. Bye now.